Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And we're just going to jump into it because y'all are not here to hear us. So my name is Kim. I'm the Children and Young Adult Consultant with the Connecticut State Library. Hello, Connecticut, everyone from New England and anyone not from New England. Welcome to the 13th Teen Summit, which is a wild number to see because I've only been a part of this for, I believe, 3 years. Teen Summit is a day-long virtual conference brought to you by the youth library consultants from all 6 New England states. So go ahead and wave, everyone. We've got Danielle from Rhode Island, Christy from Mass, Kara from Maine, Jonathan from Vermont, and we've got Reba, who you're going to hear a lot more from at the end. And I don't think I need to point out the fact that Tiffany Jackson is on the screen right now. We will get to that later as well. So the schedule that you all should have received includes Zoom links for both tracks throughout the day. You can come and go in and out of those tracks at will. It also has a link to the New England Teen Librarian Discord server, which you are welcome to jump in and chat with folks as we go through the day and beyond. There's a link to today's evaluation in that same Google Sheet, as well as a link to the virtual tote bag, which I just put in there a couple minutes ago. It's got digital arcs from a bunch of publishers who are supporting this event, as well as slides from our various speakers throughout the day. A big thank you to Lee and Low, Little Brown, Penguin Young Readers, and Simon & Schuster for those digital arcs. We are in webinar mode right now. So again, you see that you can chat with each other, but any questions for Tiffany Jackson, we're going to ask that you put in the Q&A so I don't miss them. I also want to let you know that everyone should be able to turn on captions if that is what they prefer as they go through Zoom today, throughout both tracks as well as this webinar. Yes, ARCs, we love to see them. And I'm gonna be quiet because like I said, you guys are here to hear from Tiffany Jackson. Drop your questions in the Q&A. I already see one came in. Thank you all so much and enjoy your Teen Summit today.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mass Teen Summit and a huge, huge welcome to Tiffany D. Jackson, who I love to say your full name. I feel like every time. I'm Reba Tierney. I'm the librarian here at Waltham High School, and I am super excited. I was a member of the Mass Teen Choice Book Award Committee for the last 2 years, and I'd like to, as my impeccable taste, I nominated The Weight of Blood. If I didn't do it, someone else would have. So when they asked me if I wanted to interview Miss Jackson, and I'm excited. I'm nervous, and everyone out there, I apologize in advance if this goes sideways. It's not Tiffany's fault. It's my fault. So did you want to say anything before we start?
No, I'm just happy to be here, obviously, and thank you so much for having me. I wish I could see you guys in person, of course, but we were just talking about how we love virtual conferences like this because the more the merrier. So very excited to be here.
All right, awesome. Well, we have big surprise. There were so many questions that we came up with to ask you. Some are fun, some are about writing, the craft, some are general, a little some more personal. So we'll just kind of go through them and take your time answering them. We'll make it as organic as possible. And if there's anything I miss, I'm sure the crew out there will throw it in the Q&A. And if there's a question and you want to expound on it or take it in a different direction, please do. So since we Weight of Blood kind of got us where we are right now, quick question about horror and true crime. So the past few years there's been a huge uptick. Everyone seems to be, especially I'm at a high school and can't get enough of true crime and horror. Do you think where do you think that comes from, and how has it impacted your writing?
I think it's I don't know if this is a well-known fact or, this could be a well-known fact that I think horror has always been a lit genre, like everyone has always like been into horror in some capacity, especially we just came out of the spooky season. So, everyone had their books and their movies that they've always want to watch. I think people love a good scare. They love to challenge their own reality. And make them question themselves, like, what would I do if I was in the house and like Jason was like chasing me? Like, what would be my like action plan, basically? Like, would I run up the stairs and stuff like that? And that's one of the things that, kids love. They love for their own realities to be challenged because it makes them kind of like, sorry, it's my dog. It makes them sort of think about like, what would be the possibilities, and it challenges their sort of like, expectations of things. So I think I was one of those kids who have been listening and watching and reading hard since I was like a really young girl. And I wasn't alone. If it was just me, I would be like, okay, I'm the weirdo in the room. But no, like, everyone was taking out Goosebumps books. Everyone was watching like different, like, and then like even like high school, everyone was watching Scream. And like it is very much like, the genre that's always been like it. I think one of the reasons why, to answer really your question, as far as like why it feels like it's much more of an explosion lately, especially with like true crime as well too, is because the genre has finally it's become more diverse. We haven't really had a lot of Black and Indigenous and Latinx horror like we have now. Even up until like, maybe 2-3 years ago, I was one of 2 horror writers, women horror writers in the entire genre of YA that was Black. So which was kind of insane considering how many YA books, as you all probably know. Now that number has 100% increased, and it's wonderful to see. And I think we've always needed that. We've always needed to see that. And I definitely was a kid who needed to see it, especially since I was always reading these type of books and these type of stories. The only thing I did was basically just like make the main character Black without even realizing it. And now I'm just writing those stories with Black characters.
Well, we are so glad you are, and we love to see it. Obviously, a lot of other people do as well. And so about that, thank you for, and I love the Goosebumps shout out, because I'm in a high school and the kids still are like, Miss Tierney, do you have goosebumps? I'm like, here we go. So as far as I know, you've been writing horror, but you've also done some mystery, some like realistic fiction. Where do you get your ideas from your books, and a little bit about like your research process?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So typically my book ideas are loosely inspired by real cases that I either happen to stumble upon, or someone like pushed in my face, like, you need to write about this. Because even as far back as my first book, Allegedly, that was inspired by a real case that happened back in 2012. And it took me several years to kind of like formulate how to write the story, to make it as organic as possible and real as possible as well too. Even though it was loosely inspired by the case, it wasn't like, word for word transaction. So I always call like my books like, sort of like Law and Order episodes. Like every single Law and Order episode is actually inspired by something that really happened. And they put their own twist on it. They change, dynamics of the case, or they change like, the characters, the diversity of characters. And that's one thing that I did. And then as far as like research goes, which I was just actually having this conversation recently. So before, I used to do a lot of research, and I still do. I'm very much a method author in a lot of ways. I would talk to lawyers, doctors, and just like reporters that maybe covered the case. I would read books about the case. I'd read like the psychology behind either like children murderers, or, whatever the case, whatever the book that is about. I would actually talk to kids as well too. If you read Allegedly, I had actually interviewed 5 girls who had been through the juvenile justice system. And so I basically took all of their stories and experiences and applied it to Allegedly. So is a lot of research that kind of goes into that. But what I was laughing about recently is how when I first started, podcasts, true crime podcasts were just sort of like coming out of their shell back in like 2016, 2017. Now there's like a billion podcasts. And what the best parts about all these podcasts is they're doing all the research. So I'm not digging.
Right.
I'm not digging through the crates anymore. I used to have to go to courthouses to like find old cases and stuff like that. Now, like sometimes I think about a case I want, and I will find a podcast about it, and they apply all of their show notes, and I'm like, thank you for that. Like, thanks. I don't need to go that deep anymore. I still love going.
That's great. I never thought about that.
I still love like even horror, like even talking about the weight of blood. So I actually did a lot of research on telekinesis, which clearly is not a real thing, but there's a ton of people who believe it's a real thing. So there was a lot of like books on the history of it and how it even came to be. And also there was also research about like how people are still kind of like doing it today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like I infiltrated this like telekinesis Facebook group. And there would be like live chats where, and I hope no one in this group is part of the group because I apologize, but there would be live like Facebook lives where some like a man would be there trying to like move a spoon and then like would have all these like excuses as to why the spoon isn't moving. And I would be like, oh, okay, this is amazing. But then, at one point, because I was writing that book during the pandemic, I was like, I was in my apartment, like not like in my little Brooklyn apartment. And at one point I kind of looked over and I was like, well, maybe I can move that pen. And
I was going to say, you're like, can I?
I was like, you know what? I need to get out the house. It is time. It's time to leave. So yeah, every one of my books has a pretty extensive research background. I have multiple binders where I keep all my notes and stuff like that. So it's actually one of my favorite parts about the writing process is the research process.
That's awesome. Well, as librarians, we appreciate that. And I think it's obvious in reading your books. They just feel so authentic, and so that like you read it and you're like, she did her research. What about research? What's your writing process like? Do you carve out a time of day? Is it whenever you get inspiration? Are there methods or rituals that you have to have?
So I'm very much a scenester, or I'm definitely a plotter. That's what I like to call myself, instead of a pantser. So I definitely have an outline that I work off of, and I'm pretty diligent about working off of it. The best part about having an outline is like some days I may not want to work at the beginning of the book. Maybe I want to work on the end of the book. In fact, every book that I've, started, it's rare that I start from the very beginning. I'm always writing like probably the hardest scene first to kind of like get it out there and kind of like have an understanding of what what will lead to that scene. So that's part of the process. Let's see. I used to be a very like early morning writer. Like I used to be a part of the 5 a.m. writers club, and that is long gone. But I do like the quiet of the morning. So I do like writing in the morning. I need to have like, some type of silence and stuff like that. I usually turn on classical music because that helps me, sort of focus. I have like this one classical music channel on YouTube that's basically like a loop of Mozart. Because if I listen to anything else, like I'll be dancing in my seat, or like the words of some trap music song will just like leak into the words that I'm writing. So those are like most of my like processes about that. To remind myself sometimes to eat, because sometimes I'll get really deep into it. And
I never forget that.
Well, lately, yes, I have been eating all the things.
Yes.
But usually I try to make it a point to eat. That's why it's actually kind of helpful to write around other authors, because they have their processes and you sort of blend into theirs. So I love doing writing retreats, every now and then, or they're not, sometimes they're not even retreats. They're just like a couple like girlfriends or guy friends. And we just like rent an Airbnb for a weekend and we're all like working. And so you absorb other people's like energy and it makes you like sit down and write.
To be a fly on the wall for that. Yeah. That sounds amazing. Just like that energy of working with and near other
Yeah.
people. Yeah, that's so cool. So I have another kind of craft question
Yeah.
about when you start. I'm going to answer my own, but also still ask it because it sounds like do you know like the shape and style of a story when you start writing? Do you start out knowing, okay, this is going to be a thriller, a mystery, or short story, or like does that kind of develop as you write? And have you ever been like surprised or like a character became who you didn't think they were when you started?
I love surprises actually. So yeah. So typically when I do start, I know it's going to be a thriller or mystery or
Okay.
horror because it takes a different sort of craft skill for specific things. Like I've only written 2 horror, and as much as I've read and watched and stuff like that, is probably one of my hardest genres to attack.
Really?
Yeah, so it's tough. That's why like I'm immensely proud of The Weight of Blood because I feel like that's my best written work. Because it took a lot to kind of get there. But yeah, typically I sort of know. As far as like I said, I am a plotter, but I oftentimes end up changing the endings. So in almost
Ooh.
about like maybe 5 out of the 6 of my books, I didn't know the ending has changed from the outline.
I
So people have always been like, wait a minute, what? And you sort of like go one way and then you decide like, hey, like I'm gonna like maybe do something else. And sometimes that doesn't happen until like a couple of drafts in where
okay.
I'm finally like, I think this would be better if or what would happen if I did this? And then somehow it still works out. And I'm like, okay, we're going with this. So
Oh my God, I have the best idea. You need to come up with like endings and all the different endings that you would have done for your books. It could be like a
yes,
collection.
I've thought
Love
about
it.
that, especially like, I do a ton of school visits and,
Yeah.
whenever I like talk about that, people are always ask like, what was like the original ending for like allegedly, or what was the original ending
Mhm.
for Monday's Not Coming? Like, people always ask and I'm like,
Yeah.
if I tell you, I may spoil the book for somebody else in the audience. So I don't
Nice.
but it's typically like completely alternative to what you've read.
Oh
Um,
man.
yeah. So yeah, it's and that's part of the process, right? It's part of like what makes writing fun and exciting is, not really knowing where your book is actually going to take you.
I feel like this just messed with me and it's going to live in my head forever. I'm going to be like, what else could Yeah, I remember Monday's Not Coming, especially. I think it was my first book I read of yours. And I was like, oh my God, wait, I had to like flip back. I was like, what happened? I was like, oh my God. I was like, I don't think I'm smart enough for this. But yeah, no, it was like, it was so good. And I think your ending was great. Yeah, it was so good. I'm like,
Thank
ooh, what could
you.
have been done differently? So I'm kind of dancing around it, but you've written the horror, you've written amazing horror. What was it like to have the granddaddy of horror, R.L. Stine? Because didn't he compliment and like comment on your work?
Yes. So
Yes.
I am like, so I'm not a big like, if you know my background, I've worked in television for a pretty long time. So, I've been around celebrities for a really long time. But the only person that I like legitimately fangirl to the point that my face turns red is R.L. Stine.
Like
And
me right now.
like asking him to blur my book was like a big ask and I was so nervous about it. And then when he did, like I was just like a puddle on the floor and he
Oh my God.
loved it. And one of the other things that happened was I did actually have an event with him. I did one of his like latest Goosebumps books. And when I tell you everyone was at this virtual event, like my family, all of my elementary school teachers, like, because everyone knew that this was like my favorite author. And at the end, he was like, I've read this book and it's really amazing. And so that. And I was like holding in tears because I was just like, I am not going to cry on camera in front of this. So, I think that it's it's such an honor. And like, you know, he's still very like very nice, like so super sweet. Even when I like hit the list, I hit the New York Times list, he actually sent me an email like, you know, welcome to the spooky club. And I was
Oh my
like,
God, I love that.
because he was 100% my inspiration. One of the things I realized in the, you know, one of our chats in the interview, someone in the Q&A had asked him, like, you know, how do you keep like writing these page turners? And he said that, you know, he makes sure that every chapter ends with some type of cliffhanger that makes you want to turn the page. And I literally like my brain kind of exploded because I realized that I do that too. And I literally got that from him. And that's one of the best things about like having your heroes kind of be your, you know, your literary heroes be your like
Contemporaries.
yeah,
Really?
like they inspire you in some
Yeah.
capacity. Like I'm clearly I'm not writing Goosebumps type novels right now,
Yeah.
but he definitely inspired my writing style. And I've been reading him since he actually came out. I was at the first Scholastic Book Fair when his first Goosebumps came out. So, you know, I've been long in the game.
I love it. That's awesome. Shifting gears from horror a little, and I heard a rumor you're becoming part of the Marvel universe. And can you share any details about your upcoming book is an origin story of Storm, correct? Can you
Yes.
share any details or is stuff under wraps?
Yeah. So the book comes out June 4th, 2024. So yeah, June 4th, I believe. I hope I'm saying the right date. But it was such an honor. You know, like Marvel and DC, they go around asking authors, you know, if they'd be interested in writing, you know, novels and origin stories for their different characters. And I've been approached several times about different characters, but I said the only character that I care about in the Marvel universe has always been Storm. And when the opportunity finally came, when they were like, would you like to write a Storm origin story? You know, I almost like burst into tears. And it was an amazing experience. It was one of the hardest books I ever wrote, mostly because it was fantasy. And I don't have as much fantasy like background chops. So despite writing horror and, you know, stuff like that. So it was pretty challenging in that regard.
The chat's blowing up. People are so excited about this.
Yes. And it was like, it was great because, you know, as you know, I'm big in research. So Storm
Yes.
actually was in Cairo, like she lived in Cairo.
I
So
didn't know that.
so yeah, you know, she was born in the States, but she moved to Cairo and then her parents had passed away. So she lived her majority of her teen years in Egypt. So because of that, I got a chance to go to Egypt and sort of do my research there and kind of like, you know, experience the food and, you know, the desert. And it was really like, I always wanted to go to Egypt, but this is like, it was just an excuse for me to actually end up going there. So that was like a big part of like, you know, like why I'm excited about this book is like I was able to go to Egypt. She also she's from Kenyan descent, so I did go to Kenya at some point as well too to do some research as well. So it was really fun, and also like having the opportunity to kind of like go into the stacks of Marvel, like go back, like having the entire Marvel catalog at my fingertips on an app that I could go back to like, you know, the first time Storm was ever even mentioned, which was like somewhere in like 1970 something. Like that was like probably the best part. And a lot of people don't realize, and you know, I didn't know that people didn't know this.
Sorry, yeah, no, I'm at school and the bell rang. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
No worries. One of the coolest things about Storm people don't know is that Storm's first love, like Storm's first like, you know, romantic connection was actually the Black Panther, T'Challa.
What?
So T'Challa makes an appearance in this book. So it was really fun, like not only like talking about Storm, but also getting to write like basically a Black Panther character. So, and because of this, like there was a lot of Marvel eyes on my book, because they were like, don't mess this up, girl. Like they were not playing with me.
I'm right now, it's like the mind blown emoji is just happening over here.
Yes, like a lot of people didn't know that. And I was kind of like,
Yeah.
this is like that was like a big deal. This was her first love, like teen love.
Oh my
They, you know, they
gosh.
separate at some point and they do get back together in the comic books, but not a lot of people know that. And you would never know from watching the movies and TV shows. So that was like,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
this is gonna be amazing.
Yeah, I'm
Oh man. Yeah,
excited.
it's funny, not that I stalk you, but I did notice on Instagram you had some great photos from your travels, and now we know why you're okay. That's amazing. Wow. I'm not joking. The people are going nuts in the chat. So this is you. I feel like before it even comes out, New York Times bestseller for
Oh,
sure.
thank
Yeah,
you.
between you and Storm, I mean, like, yeah.
Well, we're definitely excited about it.
Yeah. And so talking about like your books, most are YA. I know you have that amazing children's book. If y'all don't know about it, I'll give Tiffany a minute to talk about it, but it's kind of the time of year that's perfect for it. But I do have a question about, besides the YA and the children, have you ever thought about branching out and doing like adult, or I
Yeah.
know a lot of your books can be enjoyed by anyone, including adults.
You know
But
what? That honestly, what me and my publisher have found is that I have a huge adult readership.
all five, everyone in the chat is like, yep.
Yes, I have a huge adult readership, which is like the best part about this is that it's adults who can read also with their kids, or
Mhm.
with their, like, you know, nieces and nephews, or their, like, you know, their mentorship groups and stuff like that. That's one of the best parts about writing books, that, like, you know, you can kind of come together as a family and read a book together. I love the mother daughters who come to like events and talk about books and stuff like that, and or like the mother is trying to explain to the daughter, like, you know, what exactly happened in this book.
Yeah.
So that's like that's the best part, like kind of bringing like people together to read. Because I definitely was a kid who like read a lot, and my mother read a lot, and my grandmother read a lot, so that's also like a part of it. Yes, I will eventually make a switch into adult. um and I don't know when that switch is going to actually happen. You know, I've been like teasing some books. If you, and God, if you ever talk to Jason Reynolds, when I tell you there's only one friend I have who's on my back about writing an adult book. No one trolls me more than him. And he is like, what's up? Like, what are you doing? So yes, I will eventually make a transition. But for right now, I feel like I'm happy writing YA, especially
Yeah.
knowing that, you know,
We're happy too.
we we were missing this type of YA for a really long time.
Mhm.
That had thrillers and horror, and, you
Yeah.
know, that featured Black characters. And I know this because like every school visit I go to and stuff like that, like I always run into young Tiffany's, like the girls who were reading all these type of books. Like I was the kid who went literally from Goosebumps to Stephen King and nothing in between.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
I was reading those type of books, and I always run into those girls. And I always,
I love that.
and they're always like, you know, reading books that like are well beyond their age or their
Yeah.
capacity and stuff like that. But then I always run into girls who also like are looking for stories that actually represent them. Like they want to see themselves on the page. And I
Yeah.
was, you know, I am still very much a city kid who never really saw a lot of
Mhm.
books that featured kids like me or my cousins and stuff like that. Like I wanted to see more of us. It was always books like with people with houses. And I didn't grow up in a house. I grew up in an apartment. So, you
Mhm.
know, like I
Mhm.
wanted to see more of me. And I
Yeah.
think as many books as I've written, I still feel like there's like, and many books like that are on the shelves like that, there still could be more. And so
Mhm.
I still feel like I have a little bit more work to do in this genre.
Yeah.
I also feel that, you know, a lot of the books that, you know, I'm writing kind of still speak to adult experiences. And so I find that a lot of adults who are reading this book are like, kind of healing their inner child, their inner teenager, and answering questions that, they never really, got a chance to answer when they were younger. So we still have some more work to do.
Yeah, I just got a chill. I was like, oh, like when you said, I thought of like a little army of future Tiffany Jacksons. Like they're out there. You just think of like all the people you're inspiring. Like it's
And that's what I
amazing.
hope,
Yeah.
honestly. I think that if I had known that this was and I say this all the time, if I had known this was like a viable career, that,
Mhm.
my books would be accepted and that publishers would actually like support me and librarians and educators would support me, I probably would have been an author a long time ago. And I didn't think that this was possible. I didn't, and that's one of the bigger reasons why I also do school visits. I know a lot of authors are, it sounds crazy, but like, some YA authors are actually truly scared of children. And and
Yes.
understandably,
Yeah,
because
they're
I
a
look
lot.
at, I do look at teachers and librarians and be like, you do this every day? Damn. Like, but I love going into schools because I want kids to specifically see a person like me and be like, this is humanly possible to do, which I didn't meet my first author until I was deep into college. And so it's
Yeah.
important to have that.
It's speaking from someone who works at a school with kids, it's you hit the nail on the head. Like when they see someone that looks like them or speaks like them or talks like them and they've been successful and right, it's like a light goes on in their head and it's absolutely amazing. And
Yes.
it you can tell the authors who are comfortable, like before we started, we kind of were chatting about you had done a school visit right before spring break and the adults were like apologizing to you because the kids were like a little off the chain and you're like, I get it. And like, that's amazing that you get that because there are those days that we're like, don't embarrass me. Like, don't embarrass me. I feel like someone's and then
Yes.
they do it and
Yes.
you're like, it wasn't
Yes.
me. I don't know these kids. So like, thank you for your grace, thank you for your continued willingness to engage with the students. It really does mean so much to them.
Oh, thank you.
So speaking of you have published, I think I have this right, feel free to correct me, 9 books in 10 years. Does that seem
Yeah.
right? Besides being exhausted, like, how do you feel about that? Right? Is that sustainable? Are you like, I know you obviously have more ideas and you've more in the queue, but like, whew, how you feeling about that?
I didn't like it didn't even occur to me until this year
Really?
that I actually did that. I think I
Mhm.
was sort of, in a work mode. And also when you have waited all this time to kind of finally live a dream, because I've wanted to be a writer since I could remember, honestly, when you've waited all this time to finally live your dream, it's very like all those stories, everything was just sort of like living under my skin. Like all the words were living under my
I love
skin.
that.
So it was very easy to pour out of me because I was very much like a dam, like all of it. So then once that dam was like broken, it was very easy for the words to like slip out. Right now, yes, I'm a little exhausted and, kind of, and for different reasons too, whether it be like health reasons or, the fact that, we're living in an age where, there's diversity issues, there is book banning issues, like, I have to like stop down and deal with those issues and then go back and write. And so that takes a toll creatively on everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone. So it's not just me. But yeah, like it's wild to think that like I've written that much when honestly I thought I was only gonna write one book and just be done. All I wanted was one. And I was like, yeah, I'm done. I like
Well, I'm so glad you kept going. So someone did ask a very specific question, and I thought it was kind of fun. So a nod to white smoke. Do you have a fear of bed bugs?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, full disclosure, I had bed bugs, and that's one of the things about living in New York City. It happens.
Yep.
And it was granted, it was a very small case. It wasn't like an infestation, but it was enough to drive me crazy enough that I was like, I'm seeing things. And
Mhm.
ever since, I'm a fanatic. Like, all my sheets are white. My sofa, everything that I can, like, anything that, I am super diligent about the way I travel. My
Yeah.
friends always laugh at me because I'm like pulling up hotel bed
Do you
sheets.
do you travel with the light? The
I'm like pulling up stuff. I'm very, yes, I'm very diligent about that. And it was interesting when it happened where I felt like I was like just seeing things. And I was like, I know I'm not like hallucinating, but I actually kind of, it was just like, that's how it felt.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I felt like what it was like to be haunted.
I mean, yeah, that book was so powerful in so many ways.
So,
Oh,
on top of the fact that I was writing a haunted house story, I wanted everyone to have that visceral feeling of just like something is like in the mist, like something is
oof.
like, kind
Like,
of like
look, literally, I'm itching
like
as you're
creeping on
saying
you, right?
this.
And like that sort of like brings an extra layer of terror to a
Mhm.
story. Um,
Mhm.
because I do feel like sometimes, like, unless you're watching a haunted house like movie, I felt like it'd be hard to kind of like hear the smells so I thought maybe adding this extra layer of
Mm.
something that I've definitely like, experienced myself, not to the capacity that Mari did,
Yeah.
but to the point where I was just like, what is this like dot on me? And it would be like, another freckle. Like I
Mhm. Mhm. Oh man. Yeah. Well, you took that and you definitely translated that into, yep. Oh, I mean, so good. So bad and so good at the same time. Um, so that's kind of like the end of the writing craft section. I'm going to slide
uh-huh.
into some general questions.
Okay.
I know that you were a proud Bison alumna from Howard,
Yes.
and and you obviously many other degrees in schools as well. But how did your educational experiences, including your time at Howard, influence your work and your ideas, if they did?
They definitely like played a huge part. I think so going to Howard was hands down the best decision I ever made. And
Mhm.
Howard was actually my fourth choice school.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, I wanted
Okay.
to go to UCLA because I was a film major. So I wanted to go to UCLA. I wanted
Right.
to go to like
Yeah.
University of Miami. I got waitlisted at the University of Miami. I was like insulted for life.
How dare they? I
I
bet
right
they regret
like
that. I bet they regret that now.
I mean, they better. And then I got into like NYU and I felt kind of weird going to school like down the street from my mom. Like I just was like for all that money. So I ended up going to Howard and it was one of the best decisions I ever made because though it is fantastic film school, it did have its challenges. It didn't have all the money to have all the bells and whistles. And so one of the things
Right.
I learned there was directly what I learned there is how to hustle, how to
Mhm.
make films, with shoestring budgets, how to get projects off the ground, and how to truly like network across. Which, a lot of people are trying to like network up and, get mentors that are like, above them. And I, for one, worked with my classmates pretty closely. It also taught me the power of story because
Oh,
specifically
okay.
Howard, it's very important that you take at least one. I think it's a requirement. You have to take one like, Black history class.
Yeah.
So you learn so much about history and art
Hmm.
and how people sort of like pivoted things to make it like so it fits into their culture. And one of the best things about
I
going to an
love that.
HBCU is you learn so much about other people's cultures. I, for one, didn't even know about HBCUs,
Hmm.
specifically because my family is from the Caribbean. So most of them were going to uni schools in the West Indies, but there's all these schools and all these like people from like the South and the West,
Yep.
and you learn about their cultures and it's amazing. And even
Yeah.
going to DC, like the chocolate city is just like an amazing area, or learning about like stuff that happens in Boston. Like it's one of those things where you become a sponge
Mm.
and you learn so much. And then what I tell students, because a lot of kids always ask me like, oh, what was it like going to HBCU? I'm considering it. And I'm like, I have been out of school for almost 20 years. And I could run into any Howard Bison today and I'm immediately supported. And I'm like, I have run into Howard Bisons all over the place. South Africa, Kenya, Dubai, I have run into people and they were instantly family. And I can't say that about all my other schools that I could have gone to. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's one of the things that if you want to be like, on unlimited support for the rest of your life, and especially as a Black creative in this, in this industry, in all these industries, it's an invaluable thing to have.
I love that. Oh, such a great experience. So you are obviously your background film, a lot of film. If you had to pick, I know it's so hard. Okay, you can pick more than one because you're Tiffany Jackson. But which is there like a certain book of yours that you would love to see adapted into a film, or like your top choice, or maybe?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So probably The Way to Blood. I would love love to see the effects, the kind of like the horror around the effects, especially around the prom. And the prom itself, I would love to see, because Carrie was one of my favorite all-time horror movies, and one of my favorite books from Stephen King. So this is very much a homage to him.
Yes.
And then if I had to pick one more, probably my book, Let Me Hear a Rhyme.
That would be fun.
Yeah, it's very much a musical historical fiction novel, which always makes me laugh because the 90s are really considered historical fiction. So it's yeah, sorry.
Yes. No, yep. Someone was like, the 80s, that should be in historical fiction. I was like, excuse me, I need a minute.
But that's how I felt kind of writing it, kind of going back into time. And the 90s was such an important time for hip hop in general. So I would love to see that turn into something that, especially for kids who are part of the culture, part of the hip hop culture, it would be great to kind of like see them learn so much from that. So
as I say, I could see it as like almost a series, like a limited series, or like
a like I would love to.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff is like, some things are in the works and some things are, on the docket.
Okay. Anything you can talk about?
Not just yet.
Okay.
Because a lot of stuff was, on hold because of the writer's strike and the SAG strike. So, the industry was just like at a standstill. I can say that my group project, as I call it, Blackout book, I wrote that with Donald Clayton, Nicola Yoon,
Angie Thomas, Ashley Woodfolk,
and Nick Stone. So that actually, because some people still don't know that actually is being produced by the Obamas for Netflix. So that book is actually still very much in the works, and scripts are being written. And, I'm excited to see that, especially since it's a book that takes place, in my city.
Do you have if you could cast, I know you don't get to do the casting decisions, but do you have like a wish or someone you'd love? And once again, the chat is
I don't
going
know.
nuts.
I know that this could sound so terrible because I really should know these kids' names, but like there's so many teen actors that are so cool that I don't know their names.
I know.
But I love all the teen actors that are in this show called The Chi that's on Showtime. They're so adorable and they're hilarious, and I love all of them. So I would just want the whole cast to just be a part of this. Like, that's it.
I love it. That's gonna be, you just made me and a lot of the chat so excited. I think they're ready for it. I actually just checked Whiteout out to a student the other day. I was I was like, oh, you're gonna love this. so excited. Oh man, I lost my whole train of thought because I just got so excited. All right. Reeling it back in. So you touched on it a little, but I know you love to travel, and you've traveled to some amazing places. Do you still have like a top bucket list or like a one place you haven't been yet, or like a top bucket list destination?
Ooh, I've
Ugh,
fun.
I
Um,
know.
let's see. So recently I've been, um, so like the seven wonders of the world. So I've done five of them so far.
Yes.
And I have two left. One is Machu Picchu, which is in Peru, and the other
Mm-hmm.
one is the Great Wall of
Great Wall
China.
of China. Yeah.
Yes. And even the year that I was considering doing the Great Wall of China was the year that, of course, everything got closed down because of COVID. So
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be a while for that. But yeah, I would love to go to Peru. Especially since I heard it's a huge like culinary town, like, it's supposed to have all like the most amazing food. Um, and of course, like, vacation, like real true vacation, because that's like a hike. Vacation would probably be like something like Bali or Fiji, like just have those
Mm-hmm.
amazing like waters. So I am hoping for that sooner rather than, and there's some stuff that I want to like do over. So for example, I went to Italy when I was 25, and it was more of like a backpacker trip, and now I want to go as an adult, a real adult, and kind of like hang out there.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of like what I would love to do. And it's been, sort of hard because I was, I'm pregnant, and so I haven't been able to do a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
The only beach I saw this year. No, I did go to
You
Miami.
were at the vineyard, right? Not that I've stalked you on
Yes, no,
Instagram. I
I
have
was
to say that again.
no, I was in Martha's Vineyard, which is one of my favorite places. And so yeah, I was on the beach a lot there.
Nice.
And yeah, that was kind of like, so yeah, I did a lot more like local stuff than international stuff this
Yeah.
year.
Everyone is saying like, "Oh, New England has nice beaches. Come our way."
You guys do.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I love to travel. I'll maybe I can see if George has his Lake Como. George Clooney might. Yeah, I'll see if it's available for
Yes.
you for a long weekend. Yeah. That's awesome. What about so I know you had mentioned earlier before we fully got started that you're kind of starting to wind down some of the stuff as you are expecting. Congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
obviously very deservedly been the recipient of so many awards. And this weekend you're the featured breakfast speaker at the Allen workshop.
I actually
Right?
had to
Yeah.
cancel that.
Oh no, I had no idea. I'm
Yeah,
so sorry.
yeah, I'm
Oh,
sorry. Yeah, limited travel. Yeah.
totally.
So I was it's a
Mhm.
bummer because I was super excited. I really love Alan.
Yeah.
I would have been this first time I was going to do a keynote, but I have spoken there before. And
Hmm.
so I do love, like, I love Alan and I love NCT.
Hmm.
So both things I had to miss this year. I feel like,
And here we are. We got you.
yes, I was really excited. So I had this and I had
Uh,
like those things to do. And so, it was like, oh, surprise, you're not going
mm.
anywhere. But but I'm hoping
Yeah.
next year I get to go back. Because that's one of the best things about, sort of being a writer is actually, interacting with librarians and educators, and getting like, that solid kind of feedback as well too. And one of the best things about Allen is like it's pretty small, right? Like it's
Hmm.
it's compact and compared to some other conferences.
Right.
I feel like you absorb more information that way.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, but still, I can ask with all the awards and honors and accolades you've received, is there one that kind of stands out or that like has meant the most to you or kind of that you're most proud of?
The accolade that stands out.
Like, you've been the recipient of a lot of different awards
Oh,
and
well, yeah. So I
oh,
would
someone said winning the Mass Teen Choice Book Awards. I mean,
that is one.
you know.
I was So the Horror Writer Association Awards, I was nominated for The Weight of Blood. And that was truly an honor to be up for that award, simply because, like, you know, it's hard to break those kind of barriers to be nominated and acknowledged for the work you do in your specific genre. So that was like that felt like a big deal to me. Even if I didn't win the award, I was still super honored. And then also I was nominated for an NAACP award. And that was like for my first book, which in hindsight, like that book really like flew under the radar as far as like work is concerned, because it was my first book. I didn't have a lot of marketing push, like, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I'm very like big on like bigging up like librarians and educators, because I didn't have a marketing budget for that. My books really became what they are because of word of mouth. And so I was really, truly grateful to have that type of like acknowledgement, despite the fact that no one knew who the hell I was.
We knew. Yeah, that's awesome. So I know we're kind of gonna wrap up a few more questions and then turn it over to the Q&A, but what are you reading right now? Anything like super fun or anything that's you're loving?
Let me look over here. Because I have a lot of books like out. Like surprisingly, I have been able to read a lot because I'm trying to like do all the work before I, you know, have to go on a true maternity leave. But let me
I don't think anyone is surprised by that. You're such a hard worker.
Oh, well, I just started this book called Black Cake, which is a series now on Hulu, and it's phenomenal so far. So I'm really excited to read that. It also kind of like it hits a little close to home because it's like island based, and yeah, I definitely, and the show is amazing too. I've been watching the show with my partner, and so we love it. So, and then we're hard to please.
Nice.
I also just started, I had to make sure I was reading this title correctly. The Only One Left by Riley Sager. He's kind of like a thriller.
I've read some of his.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like a lot of his work. So I was excited to start that as well too. So so yeah, I've just been kind of doing that. And then was the book on my nightstand is What to Expect When You're Expecting, because I have no idea what I'm doing. So this has been fun.
Nice. Well, speaking along that, I don't know. I have not personally myself any children, but I'm a great gift giver. I love the registry. There's stuff that I was like, what is that? It's amazing. So is there like one item or kind of like a over the top or almost like you're like, I can't believe I want this, but like something like for the baby that you're like, what is this?
You know, honestly, I'm actually so surprised by how expensive everything is. I'm stunned by how like, you know, inflation, like because you know, I'm also like the auntie who will buy everyone anything. And I've been buying my friends gifts for like years or whatever. And then when I turn around to buy it for myself, it's like almost like double the price. So it's really kind of like, wait, what's happening? So that's been but I am excited to buy like, you know, to stack up a library. I'm really excited for like a picture book library. So that's like, you know, one of my like goals is to like have that sort of like, so it could be more of a routine, because I grew up reading, and I think it's important for all children to grow up reading. It really just sort of like, it just injects like adrenaline in your like veins for your own imagination. Because I don't think I would be this way if I didn't like read as much as I did.
Right. Yeah. No, that's perfect answer. You know, I thought maybe a silver rattle from Tiffany, but you know, with books. No.
Yeah, books are about
Yeah.
like a really cool library is what I'm like hoping to like sort of build in this.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm excited about that.
I love it. Well, just send us your list and we're on it. That's great. So I'll do my last two are kind of fun, like holiday-ish questions.
Okay.
What is your favorite Thanksgiving side dish?
Absolutely mac and cheese.
Okay. Okay.
So second would probably be candy yams. I definitely have like a sweet tooth. And maybe third, which is a requirement, is cranberry sauce, but it has to be the cranberry sauce in the can.
In the can.
Ridges, so
That
I
it's
know where
still,
to slice.
yes, it looks like it still came out of the can.
Yes, like my mom one year tried to get creative and like made it herself, and
Yeah.
I went to the store to go get a can. I was like, we're not doing this. Like,
Like we are not here for that.
it's like stop trying to change stuff.
I know. Like someone's like, I made homemade cranberry sauce, and you're like,
Yes, with like orange peels and stuff like that. I was like, oh,
or like walnut. Yeah,
yeah,
we're
I
not
was
here
like,
for that.
no,
No.
no, we're sticking to the basics. This is the
I,
one time a year I need you to
mhm.
stick to the basics. So yes,
I
I'm.
could tell you were a woman of good taste.
Thank you.
And last but not least, very important. Not that I'm judging you by this answer, but do you consider Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
I knew it.
If you want like a whole dissertation about this, you guys
Oh,
speak to author Lamar Giles. He can give you literally a whole dissertation about why this is a Christmas movie. And it's funny because it's rare that I actually see it on TV on Christmas Day.
mhm.
It's like the day before or like that weekend. But yes, it is somewhat of a
Yes.
tradition to watch
Mhm.
Die Hard in some capacity. But yes, it is considered, and there's many articles that talk about the fact that Die Hard is actually a Christmas movie.
All right, I'm in. I'm all in. If I didn't love you before, I love you even more now. Um, and then and we do have to say next time Jason gets, you can just give it right back to him and be like, "Oh, what have you written lately?" But I know
Yes,
he's
he's of course, because he's of course like he actually, what is he working on right now? God, I probably shouldn't spill the beans on that, but yes, he's
Oh
also,
no, go right
yeah,
ahead.
I just thought about that. I was like, wait, I'm about to just blow up his whole spot. Which would have been fine.
Yeah, oh, he wouldn't mind at all.
No, no, he wouldn't
Mm,
mind at all. But
no.
yes, he's definitely on my butt.
Yeah. The other, and I feel like you will appreciate this, the other movie people are throwing in the chat is the Gremlins. Gremlins as a Christmas movie.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh,
It's
yes.
I mean, I guess so. Yeah, it's still it's
Yep,
like
I
it's
know.
one of, are we talking about, well, wait, Gremlins 1, right? Not Gremlins 2.
Yeah, yeah, we have to go traditional.
Yeah,
I
Gremlins. Yeah, because Gremlins 2 was sort of gross and it's like, but Gremlins 1 definitely, it's an adorable Christmas movie. Yes, with
I
Gizmo. Yeah, yeah.
I rewatched it last year. It had been years since I actually watched it, and I was like, "Oh, this is like I I can't believe you watched this as kids." It's
Right. Yes.
terrifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are some things now where I'm watching and I was like, what was I doing?
I feel like those of us raised in like the 70s, 80s, we're different. We're different
Yes,
than
we're 100% built
yes.
different. Yes.
All right. So, oh my gosh, this has been amazing. And
Hey.
I could stay here all day, but that is not the plan. So, I think we're going to turn it over to Q&A, but I have a quick question. Would you, if I take a quick screenshot of us chatting, would you
Yes.
mind? Okay.
Okay. Are
I'm
we
like,
smiling?
I'm like
Are we
10.
chatting? Okay.
I don't know. What are we doing? How do,
Okay. We'll smile. We'll just smile.
okay. Okay. We'll smile. Yay. Of course you look amazing.
And
So I think Kim, are you jumping
Yep,
into to
I
the
am indeed. So we have, let me unspotlight and then re-spotlight. There we go. Good morning again. The chat's been hopping. We've got quite a few questions. We'll just kind of go through as many as we can get through from our librarian viewers. So someone asked a great question. Oops, I broke everything. Oh, I fixed it. Have you considered writing a sequel to any of your books? They're all very self-contained, but have you wanted to revisit any character or world?
um I think the closest I ever got to writing a sequel is I wrote an epilogue for The Weight of Blood, which actually it was like a pre-order campaign, and kind of like wrapped up Maddie's story. But people loved it so much they actually put it in the paperback version of Weight of Blood. So if you get the paperback version, you actually get like a wrap up of that story. And that's like the closest thing to a sequel. And then after that, I probably would do something very close to like maybe a small novella for like Allegedly, because sometimes people always ask me for a sequel for that, and I'm like, the story's done, like let's move on. But yes, that's probably the most. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. And I mean, there's a lot of sequels and trilogies, and sometimes it's nice to just have like a contained story and you're like, I read it, it's
Yeah.
over, I'm traumatized, I have a book hangover, but like it's over and it was a great
Yes,
time.
let's move on. Yes.
Okay. Someone else, my colleague, said, hell yes to Black women and people of color being represented in YA horror fiction. Have you done any mentoring of other authors of color?
So not specifically, especially the last 2 years. It's been hard to, like, I'm one of those people who, like, if I'm going to mentor, like, we're going to be like this. And the last like 2-ish plus years, it's been hard. And I don't want to be one of those mentors that, you check in with me like, once a year and that's it. I do, however, make sure that like I put like, I at least speak to a debut author to kind of give them the guidance that I didn't get when I was younger. So I'm hoping that when I come off of maternity leave, I'll be able to put on more workshops to talk about like the ideas of writing horror and, what sort of is, well, I don't know if expected is the right word, but what's like, best practices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it can be really powerful hearing about other people's experiences. I imagine. I mean, we do a lot of that in the librarian world. So, right, that can be very powerful hearing from other people. We have another question. Given what we're seeing with teen struggles with mental health post-COVID and etc., do you think horror helps teen readers become more emotionally resilient?
Absolutely. Because like I said, one of the best things about being in horror or reading horror is you immediately inject yourself into the story and you wonder how you are going to survive. And horror is all about survival. And that is sort of the spine to resilience, right? Is, everyone just wanting to survive, whatever they're going through. So I think putting yourself in horror and giving yourself a chance to sort of like separate from, the real world that you're in, but yet not be too far away from it, definitely encourages and helps. And especially like for a kid like me, I was growing up in like New York City during the 80s and 90s. There was a lot going on, and horror was honestly the closest thing that could resemble my everyday life and made me want to like, figure out, how do I survive this?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
how do I get out of this situation from being chased by the boogeyman?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I just to sort of like circle back to something that you had said when we were talking about adult readers, I had typed it in the chat and then you said it immediately that as, an adult, Black woman, person of color, it can be really healing to read these YA books about Black teens because we didn't have them. Like we had that sidekick girl from Animorphs, right? We had like the occasional like sidekick on a bike and Goosebumps. It wasn't there. So they're like, you can feel it happening in your soul as you're reading these experiences. So I love that. Thank you so much. Just from like a random like person who was once a child reader. We have another question from someone else who's also a pantser. And they said, as a pantser, I'm always very interested. What is your writing process to create an outline?
I think this is the first time anyone's asked me, like, how do I write an outline? Typically I have an idea of where I want the story to go and I sort of detail that. And sometimes I have to stop down to kind of like do some research to kind of like plug in the holes of this outline. But generally speaking, I just have a general process of what I want it to be like. I'm also like, I'm from the school of, I'm a film school nerd. So I write a lot of my books, like I write scripts, and scripts have like a certain formula where you have to hit, benchmarks by certain like pages. And that's the same way in, you have to get to at least one plot point by like page 20 or in your book. And so, sometimes it's like page 50 of your book. And if you don't know what your book is about by page 50, then you don't know. So a lot of times it's about like following that plot point, like plot point 1, midpoint, where's the climax and stuff like that. So I follow a lot of the formula of that to make sure the outline sort of speaks for itself. You of course will always like plump up your outlines later as you go along, but at least you have to have some type of map to get going.
So interesting. As a reader, I don't know anything about any of this, but it sounds like such a process. And to think about, a person trying to live life while also like doing all of this work to share a story with us just blows my mind. I actually want to skip this question just came in and I want to skip to the bottom of it because I'm really excited for what the answer will be. What will baby's first horror story be?
Oh,
And feel free to, I imagine you need to think about it. What a random question.
I gotta think about it. Because while my partner doesn't like horror that much, it's like pulling teeth to get him to like sit down with me sometimes. So I'm trying to think of like what would it be? Because there's some horror that I feel like was probably too scary for me, like Child's Play Chucky when I definitely was collecting dolls, like that was probably too much for me. But I do feel like I don't know, man, this is a hard one. I have to come back for that one.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe some local librarians will tag you in some tweets, We can start with picture books like Go Away Big Green Monster or something like that and move on from there.
Because I think it's important for them not to be afraid of something that's so cool. So yeah.
Child's Play. My parents told me not to do it and I did it anyway. So we have another question. All that's really beautiful. What roles have libraries played in your life? And are there any favorite ones that you've been to?
So libraries have been sort of like very much in life for a while. But to give this one a shout out, so I live down the street from the Brooklyn Public Library, the Grand Army Plaza, so like the main branch office. And when I was writing allegedly, it was actually in the middle of this really big hurricane you probably know about called Hurricane Sandy. And that library was still open. And that was like a refugee camp for like most Brooklynites because that was the only place that was like open and had power and heat. So I actually wrote most of allegedly, the first draft of allegedly in that library within that like week or two. And hilariously, and I big up all the librarians there because the internet was down. And so we had to go back like card catalog style to like look up the research books I needed. And some of them like remembered it off the top of their heads. They're like, oh, I know where that book is. And so they definitely played a huge part. And I also love libraries. I think people like underestimate how like resourceful they are. Especially like nowadays, like there are libraries that like have like podcast rooms and studios that people don't know about that like you're like out here like spending money to like, or like I did a conference, a bookmobile conference last month. Really dope. There was a bookmobile that had a like one of those 3D printers on it. It had a computer, like, so now people can go onto the bus and not only check out a book, but also like send a resume. Like those bookmobiles are going to like, prisons, especially when they're having like, children's days. Like there's so many resources in libraries and they're so fun. And they actually have a lot of great activities as well too, especially for kids, not just for kids, but like for adults as well too. So I don't think people think about them often. I always have to remind people like, hey, that like there's like a whole like writing workshops happening at the library like right now. You don't need to come to me when you can go there for free. Like
yeah.
And get a book. So,
book, laptop, hotspot. As someone who used to work on a bookmobile, I'm really jealous I didn't have a 3D printer, but like hats off to whoever was able to make that work. We have a question. Mary, I don't know if this is a book. Was People Under the Stairs one of the inspirations for White Smoke? I've wondered that when I read it.
No, but that's actually a really good movie. People Under Stairs is like a really classic, like horror movie. It's not, but that's like hilarious. The inspiration actually for White Smoke was actually came from a real case that happened. It was my first international case that happened in Japan. And I don't talk about the case because it kind of like gives away the whole ending for the book. But yes, like basically everything that happened in the book was something that happened to like a person living in Japan. And so I thought that was a hilarious kind of like way of talking about a haunted house.
Oh, okay. Well, Mary, now you know. We down to our last two questions. What are your thoughts on the audiobook experience? I find it makes books way more scary than words on paper.
So I really love the audiobook for The Way to Blood. Like there's like sound effects and stuff. It was my first one that had like sound effects and a slew of a cast and stuff like that. It's really, really cool. I do love that. Like I have ADHD. So I was a kid that was in a learning center that I would listen to books on tape and also read them. And so it's imperative to me that the audiobooks sound like, because I was that person who like used to like read. And then, it used to like bug me that like the audiobook like narrator would like mess up the character's name. Furious. Like
Pull it together.
like I would be like 16, like they don't know what they're doing. So I really love audiobooks experiences because I think it's important. And I was one of those that really helped me focus and read as much as I humanly can. So I think that especially like knowing like, because I've been to a bunch of libraries, I always visit the library when I go to a school, and like I love seeing kids who hang out at the library. And then like you see them on their like headphones and they're actually like reading a book. It's very cute. Or like,
Yeah.
I've been to schools. There was a couple of schools in like Iowa that had like teen cafes in the library.
Mm-hmm.
Where, they had the little like, what's that little like pod coffee maker?
Like the Keurig.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And they would
Mm-hmm.
like sell cups of coffee for like 25 cents or 50 cents or whatever. Like it's mostly
Yep.
like hot, but
Mm-hmm.
and they would take all that money and buy books that kids would then be able to like have. So like the library was sort of like funding itself in a way. So yeah, that's another reason why I love libraries, is that, there's so many creates like, I love walking in there and seeing kids like legitimately hanging out because it's a safe space.
Yeah, I love that. In one of my libraries, there was a kid sitting under the table with their headphones on. And I like leaned down, like, you good? And they were like, fine. And then
Yeah,
just
it's
walked
like,
off there.
they like their little tent.
Yeah,
You know.
just making sure. Carry on, go forth. Our last question before we turn you loose. If any of your books were to get a graphic novel adaptation, which one would you choose?
Oh. You know what? I would choose White Smoke. I think that, having the graphics behind there, especially for those who know graphic novels, and like when they zoom in on the person's face and they're like horrified, I love that. I absolutely love that. So I think that would be a really cool, if out of all of my books, I would love to see that happen for that one. I think it adds, and I was a girl who, well, not girl, I was a woman who read most of the Walking Dead, like graphic
Mm-hmm.
novels, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And so that's what I envisioned, like as far as like the spookiness behind it. So yeah, that would be
Yeah.
cool.
And someone just wrote creepy bed bugs, and now I itch again. Tiffany Jackson, thank you so much for being here with us today. We appreciate it. There's over 160 people here. People will be watching the recordings. Thank you so much for giving us your time and also just sharing these books with us. I mean, it's changing lives of us as adult readers, our teen readers. Everyone's saying thank you in the chat.
Oh, thank
And
you so
we wish,
much.
thank you, everyone. We wish you the best of luck on maternity leave. Reepa's giving you a little heart. And thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is an amazing way to go out before maternity leave. So
Awesome.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And to everyone else, bye. To everyone else, this is just the beginning of our day. I'm gonna unspotlight myself because I don't think it's that important. This is the beginning of our day. We're on a break now, I'm mostly sure. Feel free to use the Google Sheet to go in and out of those tracks, in and out of those sessions. They will all be recorded. The recordings will be put back into the Google Doc once we have them processed and captioned and things like that. Christy's just dropped that in the chat for all of us. And enjoy your break. And we're really excited to see you for the rest of Teen Summit. And we'll check you later.